That's right, we're back for another episode. Head over to BlueChew.com. That is the major sponsor of this show. Use the promo code PERSPECTIVE. Get your first sample for free. Just pay $5 shipping and handling. Russ McCall, Dennis Farrell here for the next hour talking wrestling. What's going on, bud?
Not too much. Coming off a great road trip weekend, I'm ready to rock and roll tonight.
We are. And thank God we are back here in the O'Reilly Art Apart Studios. It's our home away from home.
Absolutely it is. Feels good to be home.
So let's talk about this weekend, because you and I went out to a show in Dayton, Ohio, which seemed like forever to get there.
It did. What I was told by my dear co-host is that, hey, we're going to go to a show in Ohio. It's about 2 hours away until we hit the interstate. And he says, I Googled it on the way. It's 4. Settle in for a road trip.
Settle in. That's right.
But it was a good road trip.
It was a blast.
Yeah, great.
Thank you to Sammy Callahan, Dave Chris for the invite out, the Rockstar Pro. The last show in that building, they are moving to a new show. So if you're listening, Dayton, or you're about 4 hours away, tell your friends you're 2. But if you're out about 4 hours away, go check out that show.
Yeah, Rockstar Pro was a great time. It was a great show. They were more than hospitable hosts for the night. So it was. I was glad to be there.
I can say that from opening match to the end, not one bathroom break match on that card.
No, not at all.
And that's rare. And over the whole weekend, I did not see one Canadian Destroyer.
No,
not one.
It was kind of nice, and I know that's not a slight on our dear friend.
Which we will talk about.
Yeah,
P.D. Williams
I'm
here
actually
in a little bit.
glad I didn't see one.
But if you go over to WrestlingPerspectivePodcast.com, you can listen to our 2-year anniversary podcast. By the way, you're now part of the family. Happy anniversary!
Happy anniversary!
2 years. PD and I started the podcast. I told him I'm going to rename it Panama Sunset, the podcast.
I bet he absolutely loved it.
He didn't laugh as hard as you did, but I appreciate the laugh. But head over. You'll get that joke if you head over to the Wrestling Perspective Podcast. You can listen to this. If you miss any part of this, you can also listen to all the other podcasts. I had a one-on-one with Sammy Callahan where we talk about playing Nintendo 64 against each other.
Yeah, no, you had some great interviews this week. This past week was really OVE takes over WPP.
Yeah, and OPP, yeah, you know me. So, listen, when we come back, we've got a lot to talk about, Russ. Our news segment is going to be full. It may spill over into our third segment. It is going to be amazing. We're going to talk about P.D. Williams and his controversy on Twitter. We are going to talk about Raw and SmackDown. And, does one superstar leaving WWE mean the end of it? We'll talk about that when we come back here on Wrestling Perspective Podcast. What does everybody want? News. What does everybody get? News. It's a Wrestling Perspective brought to you by BlueChew.com. Go to Blue Chew right now. Use the promo code PERSPECTIVE. Just pay $5 for shipping and handling, and you get your first order for free. You don't only help Blue Chew, but you help us, the show. So go do that. It's the lifeblood of what keeps us on the air here on your local radio stations. All right, Russ. I'm nervous. I'm handing over the reins. I'm going to let you lead your very first segment. Are you nervous?
No, I'm ready to go. I'm a winner from the start. So let's
my little boy's all grown up. All right, Russ. I'm sitting back and I'm playing co-host this round.
So the first thing I want to talk about tonight is WWE's quarterlies came out. Well, really the year-end statement. The interesting point that they've had the lowest ratings in their history, and at the same time, the highest grossing year in history. What do you think about that, Dennis?
I'm okay with that because think about this. The AEW stuff did not come out until, 3-4 months ago?
Correct.
And I wonder if they're factoring in the Fox deal into this whole thing too? Because that's an influx of $1 billion?
That's a huge influx, and not to even mention the Saudi Arabia money they've coming in.
Exactly.
So they're getting money from areas of revenue that were not standard and typical in the past. So I think really it's hard to compare the financials of the world that WWE is running now compared to what they did even 5 years ago.
Oh, absolutely. These guys have built their own income stream into their own company, which is smart. You have the network. People are paying for that. You have YouTube. You're getting clicks for that. Yep. Now you are going to Saudi Arabia and all these other countries who are paying you to do that. This is why they will never go out of business. They may not be the number one rated TV show forever, And I think it'll take years and years if that were to happen. But they will always be in business now because you look at the money structure now as opposed to the Monday Night Wars. They didn't have a lot of this stuff to influx when WCW almost put them out of business.
No, that's exactly right. Between the Fox deal, the stuff with USA, Saudi Arabia, I mean, we're looking at those contracts are lasted anywhere from 5 years to 10 years out.
Yep.
So
they're not going
where
anywhere.
they're at now and this revenue streams they have coming in, those aren't going anywhere. Those are going to stay at the top of the list, and they're set for a long time, even if they make the most catastrophic of decisions on TV.
And they have.
Yeah. They've already started.
Yes.
And that hasn't affected anything.
All right. What else are we talking?
How about The Undertaker? Let's talk about The Undertaker for a minute.
This is interesting. Tell me about it.
So, just the other day, The Undertaker removed all references to WWE from all of his social media accounts. So it wasn't just one where it was a quick little name change. He removed it from all of them. And he started taking outside bookings and appearances. It doesn't look like he's going to be wrestling, but he is doing spoken word shows. He's got a couple booked overseas in the United Kingdom, and he's charging $25,000 a pop.
Let's start a GoFundMe and have him come to our WrestleMania party.
I'm in for sure.
I think with a GoFundMe and then like the highest contributors can actually be here for that.
That would be that should replace Blue Chew. Sorry, Blue Chew. Well, it should be added right after Blue Chew as our number one sponsored plug. Please donate to the GoFundMe to get Undertaker at the Wrestling Perspective WrestleMania party.
Oh my gosh! What if we could get people to donate $25,000 and they could show up for free?
I'm in.
I wonder if this could happen.
I think we should try it.
We need to find 25 people that'll give us $1,000.
I think it's worth a shot.
I wonder if that's like flight and hotel, or do we need to come up with that also?
Do you have sleeping bags? That's what I'm wondering. I mean,
sorry,
if they're willing to pay
spare room.
Well, for him, I mean, but if you're getting people to donate, maybe you put them up in the basement is all I'm thinking.
Oh my God. No, my bar's down there. I don't want it down there. I'll put them in the spare room.
Oh, okay.
And be like, I hope you're not allergic to cats or 10-year-olds.
At $1,000, you're looking 25 dudes deep in a...
It's
fine.
Yeah.
I mean, hey, I've been to bachelor parties. We packed more guys into a room before.
I wonder if we can just get Petey to give us the $25,000.
Yeah, I'm sure he's.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm sure Impact will just donate it to us.
Now, here's something interesting because he's going by The Undertaker, and I have to believe that with all the time that he has spent, this guy will kind of owns his own name. Like the WWE is not going to pull it from him.
No, I don't. I'd have a hard time seeing them want to fight him on that. That seems like the kind of thing they're going to give him the license to use because
absolutely,
otherwise they would be shooting themselves right in the foot.
Oh, he won't come back for Manias or anything.
They need him still for appearances, so they're not going to do that.
And I have to believe in one of those deals. There's some sort of co-ownership of the name.
Oh, I'm sure there's got to be something worked out. They've got an agreement worked out. Clearly they do.
Yeah.
Or he wouldn't be using it, but they still want him for different appearances, I'm sure. Just like with Jim Ross or Steve Austin.
And Jim Ross isn't signing a Legends deal.
No, he's not. And that'll go into another topic in a minute here.
Yeah, that's right. Go ahead.
Let's talk about AEW. An ever-growing topic here in the wrestling world, and especially on this podcast.
Radio show, we like to call it.
The radio show.
Podcast is for amateurs like Petey Williams.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
and me.
That's true.
But radio.
Jim Ross is one of the names that's been floated around as being interested in AEW in some kind of role. Along with that, lately though, we've seen a handful of guys who have not re-signed their contracts yet for WWE.
So I want to step in because I know you're going to mention the Usos.
Yeah.
And the Usos thing sound more like we just haven't signed it yet, not so much we're shopping to go somewhere else.
It probably is. I think there's two of the three guys that are mentioned I think are probably along that line, to be honest. And the Usos are one of them, one of those acts.
Who else?
AJ Styles. AJ Styles hasn't signed. He's been waiting it out.
He's got no loyalty.
He doesn't.
No, he's not. He got the WWE. He made his big paycheck. He's... from everything I heard about him, though, he's not in love with the wrestling business. So I'm not so sure that AJ would stay in the WWE if he could go and make somewhere close to what he's making for less dates.
That's a good point. So, I mean, maybe AJ is really in that running. The other name that we're seeing in that running is Randy Orton.
I can't believe it. I'm sorry, but Randy Orton to me is a lifer in the WWE. For whatever reason, I can't see Randy Orton going anywhere else. Now, I can see Randy Orton leveraging something else for a little bit more money in the WWE, but I just can't see him going. I mean, he wasn't even really a indie darling, was he? I mean,
no, he came right through the WWE system, into the main roster.
So, one of these things isn't like the other, and to me, it's Randy Orton.
Which is true, yeah. Orton might be the outlier that stays, where the other two might go. They could all stay or they could all go. Who knows?
You never know.
We're in that kind of influx right now. But a couple other key points about AEW, just snippets from the media the last couple days. Just an interesting point that Conrad Thompson was the middleman between Tony Khan and Cody and the Bucks.
Makes sense. I mean, he kind of knows everybody. He's rich.
Yeah, and which makes me think he's obviously been at all these rallies that they've been doing.
He's in.
He's been doing the StarCast event. He's got StarCast 2 coming up with some big names, piggybacking off again.
And I would tell
what is his role going to be, though, do you think? Do you think there's a chance you see him?
Man. He's a money man.
But do you think there's a chance you hear him on air?
I'm sure eventually. I'm not so sure how prominent he will be, but he could be a backstage interviewer. He could be just the money guy and showing up at events. He could just run the events, really. So I'm not so sold that he's going to be an on-air character. He's kind of bought his way into the wrestling business.
He has.
I think I think he has stories that I've heard.
Yeah.
So, I don't. But to me, I would be upset if he popped up because he's not a wrestling guy. He's just a friend of a friend. If you tuned into Impact and you saw me on TV with a mic interviewing someone, maybe
I'd be so excited.
But wait, maybe your first thought would be, all right, I'm friends with him. How cool. But your second thought would be, who had to be late or get lost or miss a flight for him to do that?
But see, I disagree on that because I think, you look at any of, whether it's Impact, WWE, there's a litany of backstage interviewers that we have no idea who they are or what their names are.
Right.
So somebody popping up, like if you popped up on Impact, it'd be no different than anyone else.
All right. So look, that's the news. I'm sure we have a ton more to go through. Maybe we'll slip some in a couple segments because I don't really want to go over Raw and SmackDown this week with the rest of this. But we can talk about that a little bit later. We will talk about Petey Williams when we come back, and we will also talk about Austin Aries and Sami Callihan. You're listening to Wrestling Perspective Radio, over 100 radio stations throughout the United States. Stay tuned, and if you miss it, go to WrestlingPerspectivePodcast.com and get this and all the other shows. Wrestling Perspective, sponsored by BlueChew.com. Head over to BlueChew. Use the promo code Perspective. Get your first shipment for free. Just pay $5 shipping and handling. We're back. Hey, listen, we teased this a few times, but let's talk about the Petey Williams thing. Close friend to you and I.
Yep.
My podcast co-host on the Wrestling Perspective Podcast.com. See what I did there? He recently got some harassment online because, as you know, Adam Cole does a Canadian Destroyer.
Yep.
Adam Cole calls it the Panama Sunrise, I believe it is.
I think something like that. Yeah.
Or
Panama
Sunset. It doesn't matter. He calls it the Panama something. And they called it that on WWE TV, and Petey got a little butthurt. God bless Petey. But he put out a short tweet, and I think this was his problem is people based how he felt about the Canadian Destroyer based off this one tweet. And it's 120 characters, so you can't really put all your feelings into it.
No, not even in an hour podcast. You can't put it all,
So we recorded the 2-year anniversary podcast this week. We put it out over at WrestlingPerspectivePodcast.com. Plug. Anyways, he talked about, look, the Canadian Destroyer is not a name based on where he's from. It's not like he's from Oshawa or Connecticut or wherever. The Canadian Destroyer apparently was the name of a guy. And Doug, I wish I could remember his last name. Yeah. And this guy helped create Pan Am Sports, Pan Am Wrestling School, which trained Scott D'Amore, Rhino, a ton of other guys. I believe Cesaro has come through there at one point. So the name the Canadian Destroyer is named after a person who passed away, who has a memorial cup. They do it at BCW every year, which is Scott D'Amore's promotion, and they do a lot of things with Impact. And Petey just kind of said, look, If it was the Canadian Destroyer because I'm from Canada, I wouldn't care. But it's the memory of a guy who meant so much to the wrestling industry. He feels like you're kind of belittling everything. And then he went on to talk about how hard it was in 2003 to get someone to take the Canadian Destroyer move, and now everybody's doing it. So he feels a little take his ball and go home-ish right now.
Yeah, you know what, though? I can't say I fully blame him, especially because the name is a tribute. So
right.
I can't say I blame him on that, nor the idea that they're taking a move that, A, looks incredibly impressive. That's why everyone's doing it. And by all intents and purposes, because it's a pile driver type maneuver like that, that should be a finish.
Absolutely.
Particularly why Peter used it as that, obviously,
and he's
right?
never used it anything other than a finish.
Nope. Been protected, used it only as a finish. And, I'd be just as irritated if I was him that people are taking that move and just using it as a transition spot. That's a terrible, to me, that's a terrible layout of a match if you're using it as a transition spot.
But once again, unfortunately, people on Twitter kind of said, it's wrestling, people still moves all the time, and move on and get over it.
So do it.
Yeah.
Protect a solid move.
Let's move on.
Yeah.
And God bless you, Petey. I love you. I poked fun at you, but I love you. I want to talk about this whole Austin Aries and Sami Callihan thing.
Yep.
It has lit the internet ablaze. A lot of people are starting to suggest now, could you see Austin Aries setting the table for a Impact comeback? After, if you're an Impact fan, you would know or watch wrestling that he no-sold Johnny Impact's finisher at one of the pay-per-views.
Bound for Glory, right?
Bound for Glory.
Yep.
And
walked out, cussed off Don Callis, and stormed out.
Threw a couple Stone Cold fingers up and left.
Yeah, in the middle, on the air.
And now he has resurfaced. I pulled this up.
Okay.
And out of nowhere,
you're probably going to have to edit your tweet. Your
I probably am. So this is how it starts, okay? So Sami Callihan tweets out, 2018 was the most successful year. Hashtag the Draw's career. Wait until you see what I have planned for 2019. Wrestler of the Year, Match of the Year, Moment of the Year, Future Impact World Champion, all hashtagged, of course, right?
Yep.
Now, I don't know. It could have been minutes, hours, seconds. I couldn't tell you.
Yeah.
Austin Aries crawls out from under a rock and says, and behind the curtain, hashtag that, you only had to, A, break a guy's face due to amateur execution. We're talking about the bat to Eddie Edwards' face.
Yep.
Ignore and steal 10 minutes of my pay-per-view main event match time for yourself, Match of the Year, which I'll say this. He's not lying. Here's what I know. It did. And I believe it was at the Slammiversary pay-per-view. Mm-hmm. And Sammy and Penta went over. And Austin was hot. That's all I can really say about that. I don't know if it was 10 minutes, but I do know that some of his match time got cut short.
And I can understand him being hot about that, but if I'm being objective from a fan's perspective, and this has nothing to do with, Sammy taking over earlier and hanging out this week. I've been talking up Sammy for quite a while, as you know, and well before meeting him. And I felt that was one of the best feuds of the year.
It easily was.
So if I'm watching from a fan's perspective, do I want to see Austin Aries versus
Moose? I think it was.
Or an extra 10 minutes of Pentagon and Callihan? I'll take Sammy and Pentagon any day.
But here's where I'll disagree with you. They had an allowed amount of time. And when you go over, it has to come from somewhere.
Absolutely. And it's going to be something that comes after you.
And I can't believe I'm actually taking Austin Aries' side because I am not an Austin Aries fan. But you have to keep in mind, that was his time. That was stolen for him. And it might be kind of rude.
Sure. You're absolutely right.
You know
right
what your
that.
time is.
Yeah, you know about that.
Now, he has one more example. Gets nobody over but you at other colleagues' expenses. Hashtag Wrestler of the Year. I don't know.
I disagree with that.
I don't know. I can only talk to one of these points. I guess we saw the bat face thing. So, but boy, did that launch his career.
Oh, and it put Eddie Edwards into a new stratosphere than he was ever at before. And so you launched Eddie Edwards. He had a solid. I don't think he elevated Pentagon by any chance, but he sure as heck didn't do him any harm.
If I knew that you would make this podcast or radio show super huge, I'd let you hit me in the face now with a bat. That's how bad I want success.
Second GoFundMe account.
Second go first. Now, the draw replies, kiss my beep, Dan, and cry me a river. Take your ball and run home when you don't get your way, just like you've done in every other company you've worked for. Kind of weak, I think. I think Sammy could have done a little bit.
But also not false at some point.
Also not false. You're correct. Oh, here's the reply from Austin Aries now. It's quite fascinating to me. Congrats on working on places I've turned down for recently. Oh, Dave Meltzer didn't report that. I don't really. Now you're bringing in a third party.
It's kind of weak.
Okay, not doing a back and forth here. I really have better things to do. So keep being a good grunt boy for them promoters, and I'll go look for you on TV. What major channel again? Now he's kind of smacking Impact.
He's smacking it. Yeah, he's smacking Impact. He's smacking MLD. He's smacking a lot of places that Sammy's working right now.
Now Sammy replies to that, doesn't he?
Yeah, he says, not going back and forth that you post your fourth tweet about me in 2 days. How about you keep my name out of your mouth, eat a bunch of bananas, and kiss my bleep, Dan. Yep. Hashtag Banana Man Dan.
Yeah, and there was something in there where he called him Dan before.
Yeah, at the very beginning.
Yeah, I don't want to muddy that waters, but Austin's like, oh, using my shoot name now. It's crazy. But here's the thing. Then he stops talking with Sami Callihan and starts talking to people on Twitter, other people. He interacts with one guy. Then he has another tweet, like from, I'd say, an hour after his last tweet about not going back and forth. Like, I've got better things to do, which tells me he's stewing. He is stewing.
Absolutely.
Because Austin Aries goes, the take your ball and go home, I think is fascinating. I mean, my beeping ball, I've worked hard on my own ball to earn the right to take away from places that people don't play the right way. Pretty simple. If you don't get that, then you don't likely have your own ball. Look, Austin Aries has a reputation. Austin Aries deserves the reputation he has. Absolutely. He deserves every bit of it. He also deserves the right to take his ball and go home, as he said. He's earned that right. But to come out of nowhere and blindside Sami Callihan, I think is Bush League.
It is, because the fact of the matter is, Sami also has the right to claim that he was the top act in Impact as far as match of the year, act of the year,
he was voted all that.
Absolutely, he's got every right to claim those things as he earned them, and it is Bush League for Aries to get upset about it. I mean, you don't even work there, man.
Aries once again looks like a baby. Although his complaints are justified, he looks like a baby in this. Yeah. And unfortunately, because
7-8 months later, he's still doing about 10 minutes in a match.
Yeah. If this was a problem, why didn't you come out recently? I probably shouldn't say this on national radio. He forced PD and I to pull down our podcast when we were talking about that incident, as PD was the producer. And PD didn't really say anything. Then people who were retweeting our podcast, he was DMing them, complaining to them. So, you're a superstar. What are you doing, man?
Yeah, it's being pretty petty.
Petty?
That's the reputation that he's got.
It makes me sad because I think he still has it. He could have been a champ anywhere he goes, even in WWE. I don't care if he's short. I think he's one of those guys, and he's very touchy about his height. He is one of those guys that has taken every bit of advantage of everything he has and turned it into success. Whether it's being tall or short. Chris Benoit shirt, people don't make fun of him.
No, I agree. It's 2019. Height really isn't a factor in professional wrestling in 2019.
Muscles are not either.
No. So it's a non-issue.
So when we come back, we have more to talk about in the world of wrestling. We'll get deep diving in on the WWE, what's going on over there. We've talked a little bit about the world outside of it. Listen, if you've missed any of this radio broadcast, make sure you go over to WrestlingPerspectivePodcast.com. You can listen to this. You can listen to the original Wrestling Perspective with myself and P.D. Williams. Russ, you'll be doing some stuff over there.
Absolutely. Coming up very soon.
We have a lot of podcasts, a lot of great things. We have the one-on-one with Sami Callihan. When we come back, more wrestling talk. A little over a week away from the Elimination Chamber, Russ McCall, Dennis Farrell here on the Wrestling Perspective. You can catch this. If you missed any of this and you want to hear it, go over to WrestlingPerspectivePodcast.com. You'll be able to hear this and the Wrestling Perspective that's celebrating 2-year anniversary with myself and PD. Don't forget to go to BlueChew.com. Use the promo code Perspective. Get your first order for free and just save and just pay $5 shipping and handling. So, Russ, Elimination Chamber, are you excited? Because it's not moving my meter. It's doing nothing for me right now.
No, me either. And as a matter of fact, I was shocked to really realize recently that
they're actually having the pay-per-view.
They're having the pay-per-view, and that so far they've only got 4 matches promoted for the card.
Let's go through the 4 matches that we know of. We'll break these down and go from there.
Okay, so the first one, Cruiserweight title match. Did not know this was happening. Can be completely honest with you.
Is this an Elimination Chamber?
No, this is just a match.
Okay.
This is just a regular match, and it's Buddy Murphy and Akira Tozawa.
Wow, finally a one-on-one match for it. It seems like that's one of those titles where it's like, I don't know what we're going to do with everybody. Just throw them all into one match.
Well, I think this is the card where everyone else is in a multi-person match. So this is the rare chance that they get to bust out and do something different to stand out.
We now know what our pre-show match is.
Yes, we do.
I don't think Buddy Murphy wins again. They're not going to give it to Tozawa.
No,
chance.
I think Buddy Murphy's on a roll as far as
there's nobody
you can
else.
Be on a roll in the Cruiserweight division. So
they moved Ali over to the regular division. Somehow he goes from getting his butt kicked to Samoa Joe for every night for a week to in the title match picture. Wow.
You know what though? You're right, and that'll lead us into our second match, which will be our first Elimination Chamber match. We're looking at Daniel Bryan defending against AJ Styles, Jeff Hardy, Mustafa Ali, Randy Orton, and Samoa Joe. I gotta say, I don't understand why Daniel Bryan is defending the title in the Chamber. To me, this should be a chance for you to take these other guys and find your number 1 contender for WrestleMania.
I kind of agree because this is up in the air as to who he's going to wrestle at WrestleMania. I feel the same way about Asuka, where all of a sudden Asuka was a hot commodity. Now you don't even have Becky Lynch making announcements on SmackDown anymore.
No.
It seems very like a weird scenario. I hate what they're doing with Asuka. I don't like what they're doing with Daniel Bryan. You're right. This should be a number 1 contender match.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, I really kind of feel like you're going to end up seeing Rowan and Harper popping up through the bottom of the chamber somewhere.
Both of them?
Maybe. Yeah, I think both of them. I think eventually you're going to see Harper with them too, popping up and giving Daniel Bryan the win. But some of the other competitors, AJ Styles, we've kind of seen AJ go back and forth.
Oh, way too much.
I think that's out of the cards now.
Right.
Jeff Hardy
It doesn't do anything.
Doesn't do anything for me. We just saw it on SmackDown this past week, and it didn't really move the meter any.
Randy Orton's the same way.
Mustafa Ali is interesting to me. He's not ready. He's too new. But I did have some people over not long ago for the last pay-per-view for the Rumble. And he got some attention from the people that didn't know anything about wrestling. They thought he was fantastic in the Rumble.
Look, he's good.
He's very good, and I think he's got the potential to be a star. I don't think it's this month.
You had a very Jinder Mahal build-up with him, where Jinder was getting his butt kicked left and right, and all of a sudden he wins one match.
Yeah,
because now
that's it. We're in.
Yeah,
suddenly he's a superstar.
I don't want to see Mustafa Ali win this.
No, I don't either.
Especially after just being decimated by Samoa Joe. And here's a guy now that's been on the roster for 2 years, Samoa Joe, and he hasn't even had one piece of gold.
I think Samoa Joe is my pick to go against Daniel Bryan one-on-one at the Rumble. Problem is you've got at WrestleMania.
We're talking Rumble 2019.
2020. Yeah. So we're WrestleMania. Yeah, I'm thinking I'd like to see Samoa Joe against Daniel Bryan. That's a heel match. I don't see that going on. So honestly, I'm completely confused about what our main event's going to be.
Samoa needs something, because if you don't give him something, he's going to slowly turn into every guy on the roster, and then we're going to look back and go, hey,
what happened?
Yeah, well, look, it's the Rusev thing. Rusev Day was the hottest thing in the world. They still wouldn't pull the trigger on a title run, and now they give it to him when it was dead in the water. So that's what I'm worried about Samoa Joe.
It'll be too little too late by the time he gets it.
Yeah.
Yeah, our other match, Shane McMahon.
By the way, Daniel Bryan walks out with it, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Shane McMahon and The Miz defending against the Usos. What do you think about that, Dennis?
Oh, man. As I think about this is where things start going awry because I can't imagine now that for another pay-per-view, these two will work as a cohesive unit and win again. Listen, say what you will. Shane McMahon and The Miz are two natural heels. They're not faces. Although I am enjoying The Miz face run. Don't get me wrong. They're both natural heels. Throughout their career, when you think of the best the best Shane McMahon moments, the best Miz moments, they're his heels. So something's going to have to go wonky here.
Well, I think at the end of the day, Shane has done a pretty decent job of being a babyface, and he can play that role as an administrator side. So I don't necessarily know that he has to be a heel, but I think at some point, I think their idea is probably going to be Miz versus Shane at WrestleMania, which means this needs to be your breaking point. The Usos are the perfect team to do it.
Of course.
Keeps them happy and satisfied, as we talked about earlier.
NXT really is. I mean, that's the one thing SmackDown has is good tag teams.
They do. They have phenomenal tag team division. So, and that's what, just like last month, any team could be the team that knocks them off. I'm a little bummed that I feel like they've ran out of ideas for those two.
Yeah,
and they're gonna rush this breakup now, but I think it's probably time.
Boy, I would love it if it went past WrestleMania and then to kind of swerve us all. But it has to happen. There's no way that they go into WrestleMania not fighting each other. Just no way.
I completely agree with that. Our final match that they have announced right now is the Women's Tag Team Elimination Chamber.
Are you excited about this? Because
no.
Are they starting to muddy the waters now?
They are. Absolutely, they are.
Are you going to now start seeing Raw and SmackDown face off against each other? Because I think that's going to a new network in October. Now, think about this. You're going to a new network in October that's going to pay you like $1 billion or a couple $1 billion or a buttload of money. You cannot keep your top talent off that show.
No, you're going to have to figure something out. And I think that's where these women's tag team titles, where you've seen the crossover from the new people that are coming in,
NXTs,
wrestling on both brands, trying to get their feet wet. And I think they're trying to test the waters and see how much people can play.
It's worked. It's always worked. It worked in WCW when you had Raw and Nitro. It worked when you had SmackDown and Raw's War, and then it was Raw and SmackDown.
But it hasn't always worked because after a while, look at the last run before this last roster split. They got lazy.
Lazy.
SmackDown looked like rematches from Raw in a shorter time frame that nobody cared about.
But look at the talent pool now that is up opposed to back then and the injuries and who wasn't there. I mean, that roster was really weak. And NXT, I think they were good and they were slowly starting to get that reputation, but they were not quick with pulling the trigger to bring those guys up to fill in holes. Now, you look at this roster, you have 4 or 5 guys that are bona fide main eventers. And you're now opening up 2 main event spots per week. I think it's going to work now.
I think if they book it right, absolutely. If you don't put every big star on twice a week and just burn your stories and your stars out, if you use the 2 hours to influx them, 1 week Ronda's on Raw, the next week she's on SmackDown, things like that, I think you absolutely could do this right. It's in their hands, and they don't have a very good track record lately of doing the right thing.
No, they don't. But you're listening to the Wrestling Perspective here. If you missed any bit of what we're talking about, feel free to go back and listen. You can go to WrestlingPerspectivePodcast.com. Russ, what else?
So let's talk about that Women's Elimination Chamber match. We've got Nia Jackson, Tamina, the Riot Squad of Liv Morgan and Sarah Logan, Mandy Rose and Sonya Deville, the Iconics, Bayley and Sasha, and the newly added, apparently a tag team of Naomi and Carmella.
So first and foremost, the Iconics is the team I want to see. They're probably going to be the more entertaining two out of everybody else carrying the belts.
If the women's tag team titles are going to be floating,
yep.
To me, judging by previous setups where they never tend to give the intended long-term champion the first reign.
Right.
They put it on somebody else for them to chase and then beat, which I think that team is Bayley and Sasha.
Okay.
I think you've probably got an idea. It's going to be one of those heel teams. That's why there's so many of them in that run. They're building up and trying to set up something for Sasha and Bayley down the road. I don't know. I feel like the Iconics have kind of been jobbed out. I mean, they all have.
Of course.
They all have.
The women's division, the women's tag team division, I think this is the worst possible time to introduce the belts.
Yeah, and I don't know how you work it into the programming. I don't know what the interest level is for it. You haven't really cared much for the men's tag team division.
Can I throw something out there?
Yeah.
If they go to a floating brand between Raw and SmackDown, they get rid of half the belts, right?
They would have to.
We're going to see a Clash of the Champions for unification matches, right?
That's a good point because we're talking, as they're hitting Fox, that's right around October, right?
Right.
So that's right when they tend to do Clash of the Champions. That'd be a great time to start merging everything together.
Because you can't have two champions. Now, you can keep the U.S. and Intercontinental. I think you can keep both of those.
I would leave them show exclusive almost, though.
I'm okay with that. I don't think I can fight you on that
Two
one.
mid-card titles running around, I think, is a little much. You could spend time building feuds to build up challengers for one mid-card title and really give guys a lot of purpose. But if you're going to do two separate titles, I'd keep them on separate shows. But after that, I mean, you start to muddy waters a little bit. So even second-guessing myself, I don't know if you keep two. Now that I'm thinking about it more, I think you just get rid of one of them.
But though, when I think of WCW, when I think of WWF, they've always had two mid-card titles. There was the television in the U.S. and WCW.
Correct.
Then there was like the European and Intercontinental, and then there was... didn't they have their own version of the United States too, or...
No, WWE didn't until after they bought out WCW.
Okay, so, but they had two, and it wasn't that bad. And look at the talent pool now, where you can sustain two mid-card champions. If you gave Bobby Roode a U.S. title or a European title or a Intercontinental title, we all would be happy.
Yeah, that's true. I guess if you set it up that way, you do have a little more leeway.
And
You've got enough championships you can overlap where they're not having two sets of mid-cards or two sets of tag titles defended on the same show every week. You could have them done separated on shows and swap shows the next week, and that's fine.
And now you're dealing with what's different now opposed to then is the extra hour on Raw. And now, SmackDown used to be 1 hour, right?
No, SmackDown was always two.
Was it always two?
You had 2 and 2, but
I mean,
if it's figuring out a situation with the titles or getting rid of that third hour of Raw,
they're not getting rid of it.
it's a giant moneymaker, but it's a killer for me, I'll tell you that.
But you can make one of those titles exclusive to a time period on the show where if the U.S. was always the first hour, I wouldn't be mad.
No, if they're kept away from each other, that's fine. But again, if you've got two shows, you don't have to have two back-to-back tag team segments or two back-to-back mid-card titles.
But segments. I agree with you where you want to keep them exclusive.
Yeah, it could work. It could work.
I think we're changing the world here, Russ.
Well, of course we are.
So what else is there? I think that's kind of about it for that subject. We beat the Elimination Chamber to death with a bat, Sami Callihan style.
Yeah, it's 4 matches, nothing exciting.
I'm not interested in
it.
And it might be something I watch during the week now. I'm not going to be in a rush to watch it.
I'm assuming mine will be too. I'll watch it before you hear our voices again at that point after it airs.
Okay, there you go. When we come back, there's more Wrestling Perspective with Russ McCall, Dennis Farrell. You can go to BlueChew.com, use the promo code Perspective, get your first order free, and pay $5 shipping handling. It helps the show. Don't forget, if you missed any of this and you want to hear what we're talking about, go to WrestlingPerspectivePodcast.com. We'll be right back.
Oh, man.
If people could listen to what we talk about in the breaks, holy cow, we may not have a show.
No, the breaks alone could be a whole new podcast on an uncensored feed on their own.
Oh, boy. Wrestling Perspective, we're back. Elimination Chamber coming up. 0 interest from me, 0 interest from Russ, which is sad, by the way.
It is sad.
If there's a time for WWE to really step up and win fans, it's right now.
Absolutely. We're in the home stretch to WrestleMania. It's time they start buckling down, and I've got less interest than ever.
Not just that, but AEW is hogging the headlines.
Oh, they're right on their heels, and they're not even running a show yet.
White hot. And all WWE has to do is put on a better than average show. This is, if I were the bookers or Vince McMahon or Shane or whoever's running the company, this is where I'm like, I want every A-list storyline out there right now because I want to fend these guys off. I want to hold them down. Now, we're getting horrible Raws. We're getting adequate SmackDowns. It's like they're just like, hey, we're WWE. We don't care.
Yeah, no one's going to move us. No one's going to budge us.
That's it.
We're fine. But the reality of it is, financially you are fine. But as far as keeping the marketplace and keeping competition at bay, which they've done a phenomenal job of for over a decade now, almost 2.
Oh, times are changing.
Times are changing, and it's about to get crazy.
I'll say this. When we first started the show, the program director reached out to me and said, we want more WWE talk. That's mainstream. And I'm like, listen, bud, I'll give you it, but that's not what wrestling fans want anymore. It's what the mainstream fan wants, but the wrestling fans, they want other things.
Well, that's it. And your mainstream fans aren't looking for the wrestling talk show on the radio. Your wrestling fans are.
Yeah.
So that's why we're giving you what you want to hear today.
So look, we enjoy doing the show for you every week, and there are a few things we need you, the fans, to do to keep the show on your local radio station. 1, BlueChew.com. Go to Blue Chew. Use the promo code Perspective. Get your first order free. Just pay $5 shipping and handling. Go to whatforapparel.com/WPP. You can get a bunch of shirts there. One with PD and myself, PD Williams. If you're just listening, we do a podcast with him from Impact Wrestling. You can go to WrestlingPerspectivePodcast.com. That's the home. That's where if you miss any bit of the show and you want to hear it, you go to WrestlingPerspectivePodcast.com. You can subscribe anywhere you get your podcasts. PD and myself, we do one. This show airs there. Take it with you wherever you go. Russ, I had a blast this week with you.
Me too. I'm glad we did it again, and I can't wait till next week.
I can't wait till you learn how to promote so I don't have to do this every week.
Oh, I'm excited.
All right, guys. Wrestling Perspective on the books. Enjoyed it. Hopefully it's better than Raw. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. And wrestle on, my friends. Wrestle on. That's all I can do. That's all I got.